What if I told you the biggest battlefield is not in politics or war, but in your workplace? What if I told you the smiling face that calls itself your boss may be your greatest enemy? They don't need weapons. They use words. They don't need chains. They use fear. And every day, without knowing it, you are being tested, your loyalty, your silence, your very identity. But here's the hidden truth. Machiavelli already warned you. Chanakya already armed you. The question is, will you keep bowing, or will you rise? Stay with me, because once you see through their masks, you will never be controlled the same way again. The workplace is not just an office. It is a battlefield. But unlike the old fields of war, here the weapons are invisible. No swords. No shields. No banners waving in the air. Here, the weapons are words. The armor is silence. The traps are hidden in promotions, projects, and praise that feels sweet, but poisons the soul. You walk in every morning thinking it is a job. But often, without realizing, you have stepped into a game of power. And the most dangerous player in that game, the toxic boss. They do not shout all the time. Some of them never raise their voice. Instead, they smile while cutting your confidence. They praise you in front of others, only to strip away your dignity behind closed doors. They are masters of illusion. They make you feel like you are chosen, special, indispensable, until the day they remind you that you are replaceable. This is the battlefield Machiavelli warned about. This is the web Chanakya spoke of when he said, "A person should not be too honest. Straight trees are cut first." Think of the toxic boss as a general in disguise. Their goal is not just work. It is control. Control of your hours. Control of your emotions. Control of your future. So, how do they fight? They use fear. Fear of losing your job. Fear of missing the next promotion. Fear of being excluded from the inner circle. They use flattery. They make you believe you are the only one they trust. That you are the backbone of the team. And yet, in the same breath, they whisper the same words into someone else's ear. They use favoritism. They build puppets out of your colleagues. They pitch you against each other, divide, distract, dominate. You think you are working for a paycheck. But really, you are being tested. Tested in loyalty. Tested in submission. Tested in how far you can bend before you break. Look closer. Have you ever noticed how a toxic boss demands overtime, but leaves early themselves? How they expect absolute honesty from you, but twist the truth when it suits them? How they drain you of energy, but feed off your silence? This is not incompetence. It is design. A toxic boss thrives in chaos, the way a parasite thrives in sickness. So what is the battlefield really about? It is not about projects. It is not about deadlines. It is not even about money. It is about power. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Your toxic boss understands this. They want your respect, but if they cannot have it, they will settle for your fear. Chanakya said, before you start some work, ask yourself 3 questions. Why am I doing it? What the results might be? And will I be successful? Your toxic boss knows you never ask those questions. They know you are caught in the fog of routine. And in that fog, they build their empire. Let me tell you a truth that hurts. Most people lose the war, not because they are weak. They lose because they do not even realize a war is being fought. Think of the colleague who works harder than everyone else, stays late, says yes to every task, and still gets discarded when they are no longer useful. They never realized the battlefield was not about effort. It was about positioning. Think of the friend who sacrificed weekends, health, even family time, just to keep a toxic boss happy. They thought loyalty was currency. They never realized loyalty was being traded for control. Now, pause. Ask yourself, are you on this battlefield without armor? Are you giving away your peace for the illusion of security? Are you fighting with honesty against someone who only fights with strategy? This is the hidden battlefield. And if you want to survive it, you cannot remain naive. You must see what is unseen. You must name the poison before it spreads. You must understand the rules before you can break them. Because the toxic boss is not the end of your story. They are the beginning of your awakening. Power rarely appears naked. It hides. It wears masks. It disguises itself as kindness, as opportunity, as friendship. The toxic boss knows this better than anyone. They cannot rule you with brute force, not in today's world. So they master the art of illusion. The first mask they wear is the mask of the mentor. They act like they are shaping your career. They say, "I see potential in you." And for a while, you believe them. You work harder. You stretch yourself thin. But slowly, you realize this mentorship is not about your growth. It is about your dependence. They want you to believe that without them, you are nothing. And so, you chain yourself with invisible gratitude. The second mask is the friend. They crack jokes. They share secrets. They tell you about their struggles. It feels human. It feels real. But remember Machiavelli's warning. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. This so-called friendship will vanish the day you stop serving their interests. Your boss is not your friend. They are only reminding you that betrayal feels sharper when it comes after intimacy. The third mask is the savior. They create crises only they can fix. Have you noticed? A sudden project lands on your desk at the last minute. The boss swoops in and saves the day with a brilliant solution. You clap. You praise. You thank them. But in truth, they created the fire just to show they could put it out. Chanakya would call this the art of necessity. A king appears essential by manufacturing threats he alone can resolve. The fourth mask is the judge. Here, they pretend to be fair. They evaluate. They measure. They say they reward based on merit. But the judgment is never neutral. It bends toward the ones who flatter, who obey without question, who feed their ego. And when you see mediocrity being rewarded, you feel rage, confusion, despair. That is the point. They want you to lose faith in fairness, so that you stop expecting it. A demoralized worker is easier to control than a hopeful one. The fifth mask is the visionary. They speak of dreams, grand plans, big futures. They dangle promotions like carrots on a stick. They use phrases like, "next year, after this project, when the time is right." And so you keep waiting. 1 year becomes 2. 2 becomes 5. Your life is spent chasing a horizon that keeps moving away. This is Machiavelli's lesson. People can be controlled not only by fear, but also by hope. Hope is the sweetest chain of all. Now think. How many of these masks have you seen? How many of these performances have you applauded? How many times have you mistaken manipulation for leadership? Here is the bitter truth. Most toxic bosses do not succeed because they are brilliant. They succeed because they understand human weakness. We want guidance, so they play the mentor. We want belonging, so they play the friend. We want stability, so they play the savior. We want fairness, so they play the judge. We want growth, so they play the visionary. And every time we believe the mask, we surrender a little more power. Let me show you some examples. In a software company, a project manager convinces a young developer that he is grooming her for leadership. He keeps giving her more tasks, more responsibility, more stress. But when the leadership role opens, he gives it to someone else, someone who flatters him more. She realizes too late that the mentorship was never real. It was just free labor, wrapped in the illusion of opportunity. In a hospital, a senior doctor acts like a friend to junior staff. He shares drinks with them after work. He laughs about life. But when the staff requests better schedules, he suddenly turns cold. The friendship was never friendship. It was camouflage. It disarmed them, so they would not expect betrayal. In a corporate office, a CEO constantly announces bold strategies, new markets, new products, global domination. Everyone claps. Everyone feels part of something bigger. But the years pass, and nothing changes. The vision was not a plan. It was anesthesia, keeping employees numb while profits quietly flowed upward. These masks are not random. They are calculated. They are ancient tools of power, refined over centuries. Chanakya wrote in his Arthasastra that a ruler must know when to appear generous, when to appear harsh, when to appear spiritual, when to appear detached. The appearance matters more than the reality. Because appearance controls perception, and perception controls loyalty. Machiavelli said that a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, religious, but be ready to act the opposite when necessary. Why? Because people judge more by what they see than by what they feel. Your toxic boss has learned these lessons by instinct, by experience, by watching others. They wear the masks, not because they love theater, but because they love control. So how do you defend yourself? You must learn to see beyond the mask. Do not mistake kindness for loyalty. Do not mistake promises for guarantees. Do not mistake charisma for competence. And above all, do not mistake illusion for reality. Silence becomes your shield. Observation becomes your sword. Distance becomes your strategy. When you see the mask, you strip away their power. Because once you know the trick, the magic fades. Machiavelli never wrote about your office. But if you read The Prince carefully, you will see your boss on every page. The same strategies that guided kings and tyrants in Renaissance Italy live on in today's corner offices and glass-walled boardrooms. The toxic boss does not need an army. They need obedience. They do not need a throne. They need your silence. And to achieve that, they turn to Machiavelli's oldest truths. Let us hold up the mirror. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." How does a toxic boss apply this? They know that popularity fades. If they rely on love, on likability, they will lose the moment someone more charming enters the room. But fear endures. Fear of losing your paycheck. Fear of public humiliation in a meeting. Fear of being left out of important emails. Fear is cheap, effective, and lasting. Have you noticed how some bosses rarely give praise, but never hesitate to criticize? That is not accident. It is calculation. Fear builds faster than gratitude. Machiavelli also warned a prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise. Think of the times your boss promised a promotion, a bonus, or recognition. Then, at the last moment, the budget changed. The timing was not right. The decision was out of their hands. Every excuse sounds reasonable. Every broken promise feels personal. But to them, it is just strategy. The promise was bait. The breaking of it was power. Another lesson: men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. The toxic boss does not believe in loyalty. They believe in leverage. They reward you not because you deserve it, but because rewarding you makes you useful. And when you are no longer useful, the gratitude evaporates. This is why the hardest workers are often the most betrayed. They confuse service with security. But to the Machiavellian boss, service is a tool, not a shield. Now look closer. Why do they pit employees against each other? Because Machiavelli taught a prince is always obliged to take sides. A neutral ruler is a weak ruler. So, a toxic boss chooses favorites not because those people are better, but because division strengthens control. If two employees are competing for approval, neither questions authority. Picture this: in a design firm, two senior designers are equally talented. The boss subtly praises one, criticizes the other. The praised one grows arrogant. The criticized one grows insecure. Both work harder. Both seek validation. And the boss? They sit back, enjoying the loyalty of two people who could have been allies, but are now enemies. This is Machiavelli's art, ruling through division. There is also the performance of generosity. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must be liberal with his own property, not with the property of others." In modern offices, this means your boss treats company resources like their personal wallet. They hand out perks, gift cards, lunches, small bonuses, as if they came from their own pocket. It feels generous. But look carefully, it is not generosity. It is theater. They spend what does not belong to them to buy loyalty that is not truly earned. And then there is reputation. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Machiavelli said, "Notice how a toxic boss surrounds themselves. Not with the most competent, but with the most obedient. They would rather have mediocrity that worships them than brilliance that questions them." And so, an office fills with flatterers, yes-men, and silent accomplices. This is not weakness. It is survival. Because challenging voices are dangerous to those who rule by illusion. Think of history. Think of the kings who built courts full of sin. Think of the dictators who silenced critics and promoted loyal fools. Now, think of your boss. Is it really so different? Machiavelli also warned about appearance. It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. This is why your boss speaks of values, ethics, culture, and yet acts in contradiction. They do not need to be good. They only need to look good in front of their superiors. So they smile at the CEO. They talk about teamwork at town halls. They boast about employee well-being on LinkedIn. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they spread fear and insecurity like wildfire. And perhaps the most brutal Machiavellian truth: a prince who is not himself wise cannot be well advised. This means, once a toxic boss reaches power, they close their ears. Advice is a threat. Wisdom from below is dangerous. So they double down on their own judgment, no matter how flawed. The organization suffers. But they do not care. Because their goal is not truth. Their goal is control. Now ask yourself, why do so many intelligent people fall into this trap? Why do smart employees still serve toxic leaders? Because most of us do not want to believe Machiavelli. We want to believe in fairness. We want to believe that honesty wins, that loyalty is rewarded, that hard work pays. But reality is harsher, and the toxic boss knows it. They exploit your belief in goodness to hide their reliance on fear. So, what is the lesson? Do not hate the mirror. Use it. When you see your boss breaking promises, remember Machiavelli. When you see favoritism, remember Machiavelli. When you see fear being used as currency, remember Machiavelli. And most of all, when you see the mask of virtue, remember Machiavelli. Because once you recognize the pattern, you stop being prey. You start preparing. You stop asking, why are they like this? And you start asking, how do I protect myself? How do I turn their own tactics against them? That, my friend, is the first step from weakness to power. Machiavelli shows you the face of raw power. But Chanakya, the Indian strategist, philosopher, kingmaker, shows you something more subtle. He shows you how to endure it, how to outlast it, how to outsmart it. Chanakya did not just advise kings. He built them. He turned a young boy, Chandragupta, into the emperor who toppled mighty dynasties. He understood something most people forget. Power is not always won by force. Often, it is won by patience, by silence, by the invisible weapons that others underestimate. Let us open his arsenal. The first weapon is observation. Chanakya said, before you start some work, ask yourself 3 questions. Why am I doing it? What the results might be? And will I be successful? Most employees jump into battles with toxic bosses without strategy. They react. They confront. They protest. And what happens? They get crushed. Because they were fighting with emotion, while the boss was fighting with calculation. Observation means watching without revealing. It means studying your boss the way a hunter studies prey. Notice their patterns. When do they lose temper? What phrases do they repeat? Who do they favor? Who do they secretly fear? Every detail is a clue. Because once you map the terrain, you never step blindly again. The second weapon is silence. Chanakya said, silence is a great weapon. It spares you from many dangers. Toxic bosses thrive on reaction. They throw insults to see if you crumble. They spread gossip to see if you bite. They assign impossible tasks to see if you panic. But silence disarms them. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. When you do not react, you rob them of control. Like a mirror that refuses to reflect, you frustrate their games. Think of the colleague who stays calm when shouted at in a meeting. The boss rages, but the silence makes them look foolish. The room notices. Respect quietly shifts. The third weapon is detachment. Chanakya taught, never make friends with people who are above or below you in status. Such friendships will never give you happiness. This applies at work too. Do not get too attached to bosses. Do not seek their approval like oxygen. Detachment means you do your work with excellence, but refuse to let their moods define your worth. You neither collapse under criticism, nor fly under praise. You become steady. And steadiness is terrifying to manipulators, because they cannot control what does not crave their validation. The fourth weapon is timing. Chanakya said, even if a snake is not poisonous, it should pretend to be venomous. This means you do not need constant aggression. You need the threat of it. Pick your battles carefully. Do not challenge every injustice. Wait. Watch. Strike when the time is right. For example, when your boss unfairly criticizes you in front of others, resist the urge to argue immediately. Instead, wait until you have proof, allies, and the right audience. Then, when you present facts calmly, the mask slips from their face. The timing turns the tide. One well-placed strike can undo months of manipulation. The fifth weapon is knowledge of weakness. Chanakya was ruthless in this. Before you fight the enemy, learn his secrets. Every toxic boss has a weakness. Some crave recognition. Some fear exposure. Some rely on one or two loyal puppets. Find the crack in the armor. Do not rush to use it. Simply knowing it gives you power. Because in every interaction, you will know something they do not know you know. Think of an employee who quietly documents every abusive email, every contradictory statement. They never reveal it. But one day, when the boss tries to destroy them, the evidence emerges like a dagger in the dark. The boss, once untouchable, suddenly collapses under their own lies. The sixth weapon is self-mastery. Chanakya said, he who is overly attached to his family members experiences fear and sorrow, for the root of all grief is attachment. Replace family with job. If you are too attached to the idea that your job is your identity, you are easy to enslave. The toxic boss whispers, without me, you are nothing. But if you have cultivated skills, networks, financial buffers, you are free. Freedom terrifies them. Because you cannot be blackmailed when you are ready to walk away. Let me give you real-life pictures. In a consulting firm, a young analyst was constantly overloaded by a manipulative manager. Instead of complaining, she quietly logged every assignment, every deadline, every impossible demand. 6 months later, when HR questioned performance, she presented the record. The manager collapsed under the weight of their own abuse. Observation and documentation 1. In a factory, a worker was often yelled at in front of others. Instead of shouting back, he remained calm. The silence made his boss appear unhinged. Slowly, others began to respect the worker more than the manager. Silence shifted power. In a startup, an engineer realized his boss was insecure about public speaking. The engineer never mocked it. He simply knew. When the boss tried to sabotage him, he offered to present to investors instead. The investors loved him. The boss, trapped by his own weakness, had to keep the engineer close. Knowledge became leverage. This is Chanakya's genius. You do not need to destroy your enemy outright. You need to outlast them. Because most toxic bosses self-destruct eventually. Their masks slip. Their allies abandon them. Your task is not to sink with them. Your task is to remain steady until their storm passes. So let me ask you, do you want to be fire, burning bright, but burning out? Or do you want to be water, flowing, adapting, wearing down even the hardest rock? Machiavelli teaches the cunning of rulers. Chanakya teaches the survival of the ruled. Combine them, and you no longer remain a victim. You become untouchable. The office is only one stage. But the play of power repeats everywhere. At home. In friendships. In families. Even within yourself. If you truly want to master this game, you must see the patterns across every part of life. Because the toxic boss is not just a person. It is an archetype. A mask that appears in many forms. Let us step into these mirrors. The workplace mirror. You already know this one. The boss who humiliates in meetings, but smiles in front of their superiors. The leader who builds loyalty through flattery and fear. The manager who steals credit when projects succeed, but shifts blame when they fail. Here is one story. A mid-level marketing manager constantly played the visionary. He spoke of innovation, disruption, greatness. But behind the curtain, he piled endless busy work on his team. One employee, instead of confronting him directly, began documenting achievements quietly and networking across departments. When an opportunity arose in another division, she was already known and respected. She left on her own terms. The toxic boss remained trapped in his illusion. She walked away free. That is Machiavelli and Chanakya. In practice, build your own base of power quietly, then leave when the timing is right. The family mirror. Do you think toxicity stops at the office door? Look closer. In some families, the toxic archetype appears as the controlling parent. The father, who disguises control as care. The mother who uses guilt as currency. The elder sibling who uses fear to maintain dominance. A man once told me his mother would often say, "I sacrificed everything for you. You owe me." That is not love. That is power wrapped in guilt. Chanakya would call this emotional blackmail. Machiavelli would call it leverage. The son lived years bending under the weight of that obligation. Until one day, he realized love is not a debt. It is a choice. When he set boundaries, the guilt lost its bite. Silence and detachment freed him from an invisible prison. The friendship mirror. Yes, even friends wear the mask of the toxic boss. The friend who only calls when they need money. The one who mocks your dreams, but wants you to cheer for theirs. The one who makes every conversation about them. Machiavelli warned, he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined. If you keep pouring energy into a friend who drains you, you are destroying your own throne. Chanakya put it even more sharply: avoid him who talks sweetly before you, but tries to ruin you behind your back. Does that sound familiar? A young woman once confided that her best friend always celebrated her failures louder than her successes. When she failed an exam, the friend consoled her, but spread gossip. When she got a promotion, the friend said, "You just got lucky." That is not friendship. That is masked rivalry. And when she finally stepped back, she discovered something powerful. Loneliness with dignity is better than company with betrayal. The relationship mirror. Toxic bosses exist in love too. The partner who dictates where you can go, who you can meet, what you can wear. The partner who gives affection only when you obey. The partner who gaslights you into doubting your own memory. This is the Machiavellian heart of toxic love, rule by confusion. Keep the other person uncertain, and you keep them loyal. Chanakya would whisper here, do not reveal all your thoughts even to your closest one. Not out of mistrust, but out of protection. Because when your boundaries are strong, manipulation cannot break you. The mirror within. But perhaps the most dangerous toxic boss is the one inside your own head. That inner voice that whispers, you are not enough. You cannot do better. You must obey to survive. Where do you think your boss's power really comes from? Not from their authority. Not from their title. It comes from the part of you that still believes you are powerless. Machiavelli would say, men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. And your inner tyrant drives you with fear. Fear of change. Fear of leaving. Fear of speaking up. Chanakya would say, a man is great by deeds, not by birth. And your inner strategist reminds you you are not born a servant. You can choose. You can act. You can rise. So how do you break these mirrors? You begin by naming them. That boss is not a mentor, he is a manipulator. That parent is not protecting, they are controlling. That friend is not supporting, they are competing. That partner is not loving, they are enslaving. That inner voice is not truth, it is fear. Naming is power. When you name, you see. When you see, you no longer obey blindly. Let me ask you, how many mirrors are you trapped inside right now? How many illusions keep you bent when you were born to stand tall? How many masks have you mistaken for faces? The toxic boss at work is just a symbol. Once you learn to unmask them, you start unmasking everyone, even yourself. And that, my friend, is when the real transformation begins. For too long, you have lived as prey, watching every move, second-guessing every word, waiting for the strike to fall. The toxic boss thrives because most people stay in prey mode. Fearful, reactive, powerless. But what if you could flip the script? What if you stopped being prey and became predator? I do not mean predator in cruelty. I mean predator in clarity, in strength, in control of yourself and your environment. Let us explore how the hunted becomes the hunter. Step 1. Build invisible armor. Predators do not chase every shadow. They stand firm. Your first armor is boundaries. The toxic boss thrives on intrusion, calling at midnight, assigning work on weekends, demanding loyalty beyond reason. The prey accepts. The predator says no. Boundaries are shields. They do not need to be loud. They can be simple. I will complete this tomorrow. Or this is outside my scope. Let's prioritize. The first time you say it, you tremble. But each time you say it, you grow stronger. And here is the secret: bullies respect limits, even if they hate them. Step 2. Control. Your silence, prey, fills the air with excuses. Predator fills the room with silence. Machiavelli taught that perception is everything. Chanakya taught that silence saves you from danger. When your toxic boss rages, do not scramble to justify. Pause. Look them in the eye. Say less. Because silence is not emptiness, it is pressure. And in that pressure, they begin to stumble. Step 3. Gather allies quietly. A lone deer is easy prey. But a wolf pack changes the game. Most employees suffer in isolation. They whisper complaints at coffee breaks, but never organize. The predator understands alliances. Start with small bonds. Share information. Support others when they are attacked. Document abuse together. Soon, you are not one victim, you are a network. And networks terrify tyrants. History proves this. Kings fell not because of lone rebels, but because whispers turned into movements. Toxic bosses fall the same way. Step 4. Play the long game. Prey lives in the present moment of fear. Predator sees beyond. Your toxic boss wants you trapped in today's panic, the deadline, the criticism, the humiliation. Step back. Ask, where do I want to be in 6 months? 1 year? 3 years? Then use the present as training. Every manipulation is a lesson in psychology. Every insult is practice in resilience. Every unfair demand is a test of your boundaries. You are not just surviving. You are sharpening. Think of it this way. A snake sheds its skin slowly. But when it emerges, it is renewed. Your time under a toxic boss can be the shedding if you choose to use it. Step 5. Expose weakness indirectly. Remember Chanakya's wisdom. Even if a snake is not poisonous, it should pretend to be venomous. Predators reveal their strength strategically. Do not scream the truth of your boss's corruption. Show it, quietly, through competence. Through facts. Through subtle exposure. Imagine a meeting where the boss misrepresents data. Instead of accusing them directly, you calmly share the accurate numbers. The room sees. You do not attack. You simply let light expose shadows. This is power without aggression. Step 6. Develop exit power. The ultimate weapon against a toxic boss is the ability to walk away. Prey begs to stay. Predator builds options. Upgrade your skills. Expand your network. Save your money. When you can leave at will, you reverse the leash. Your boss senses it. And suddenly, they tread carefully. This is not theory. I have seen it play out. A finance analyst spent years under a manipulative director. Instead of confronting, she upgraded her certifications, built connections in other firms, and documented achievements. The day her director threatened her with firing, she smiled and said, "That's fine, I already have another offer." The director froze. The predator had revealed her fangs. Another story, a sales manager quietly formed alliances across departments. When his boss tried to discredit him, others defended him. The boss realized undermining him would cause backlash. The prey had become untouchable. Do you see the shift? Prey reacts. Predator prepares. Prey survives. Predator shapes. Machiavelli would call this the art of appearing indispensable. Chanakya would call this the mastery of timing and patience. Together, they call you to rise from hunted to hunter. Now ask yourself, how long will you stay bent under fear? How long will you let someone else dictate your worth? How long will you let the mask of power blind you to its cracks? You are not prey. You never were. You only believed it. And belief is the leash. Break it. From today, observe. From today, set boundaries. From today, gather allies. From today, prepare your exit power. Do this, and the toxic boss will no longer see you as food. They will see you as fire. And fire, my friend, is never hunted. It is feared. Every battle leaves a scar. But scars are not just reminders of pain. They are proof that you survived. They are proof that you endured. And if you choose wisely, they can become proof that you transformed. The toxic boss is not just an enemy. They are a teacher, a cruel one, yes, but a teacher of the oldest lessons of power and self-mastery. If you survive without learning, you carry bitterness. If you survive with wisdom, you carry freedom. So let us speak of transformation. At first, you lived in fear. Fear of losing your job. Fear of being humiliated. Fear of speaking the truth. Fear is fog. It blinds you. But once you saw through the masks, once you recognized the Machiavellian tactics and Chanakyan strategies, the fog began to lift. Clarity replaced fear. You saw the battlefield for what it was. And clarity is the first step to freedom. A toxic boss thrives when you need them more than they need you. But transformation begins when you reverse that equation. When you build skills, networks, and confidence beyond their reach, you stop being dependent. You stop asking, what will they do to me? You start asking, what will I choose for myself? Autonomy is not rebellion. It is rebirth. In the beginning, your silence was born of fear. You stayed quiet because you did not know what else to do. But now, your silence becomes strategic. Measured. Intentional. A silence that unnerves. A silence that controls the tempo. Chanakya would smile here, because silence is no longer submission, it is dominance. Every insult, every criticism, every withheld praise, it chipped at your confidence. You began to wonder if you were good enough. But transformation means reclaiming authority from within. You stop waiting for validation. You stop chasing recognition. You decide, I know my value. And when you know it, no one can take it. Machiavelli said, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. You have become both. Victims blame the situation. Masters use it. The toxic boss becomes your training ground. Every slight is a drill in patience. Every manipulation is a lesson in strategy. Every unfair demand is a test of boundaries. You are not crushed by the weight. You are strengthened by the resistance. Think of the soldier who trains with heavier weapons than he will ever carry in war. When the real battle comes, he is faster, stronger, sharper. That is your transformation. The toxic boss, without knowing it, has forged you into something they cannot control. When you stop being prey, survival is no longer enough. You begin to influence. You guide younger colleagues, showing them how to see through manipulation. You support those who are weaker, giving them shields of your own making. You shift the balance of power, not only for yourself, but for others. And in doing so, You become what the toxic boss pretended to be, a real leader. But the greatest transformation is internal. You begin to see power differently. No longer as domination. No longer as fear. But as mastery of self. The boss may hold your paycheck. But you hold your soul. And when you hold that, you are unshakable. Real stories prove this. A woman who endured a narcissistic CEO for years finally left to start her own consultancy. She said, "If I could survive him, I can survive anything." Her clients respected her calm, her resilience, her clarity. She transformed poison into medicine. A man once broken by constant criticism rebuilt his strength. Instead of lashing out, he mastered patience. Years later, he became a director. His employees thrived because he swore he would never repeat the cruelty he endured. That is transformation, turning wounds into wisdom. So, let me ask you, what has your toxic boss taught you? Not about them, about you. Did they show you your breaking point? Did they show you your hidden strength? Did they show you the value of independence, silence, timing, resilience? Because, if you see it clearly, the toxic boss was not your destroyer. They were your sculptor. Their fire burned away your illusions. And what is left is not the fragile servant who once obeyed. What is left is steel. You are no longer prey. You are no longer afraid. You are no longer chained. You are transformed. And this transformation is not just for the workplace. It echoes into your family, your friendships, your love, your life. Once you see through one mask, you start seeing through them all. Once you outsmart one manipulator, you become immune to others. Once you build inner authority, you stop kneeling to external illusions. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The toxic boss was only the catalyst. The real story is your rebirth. Enough. Enough living in fear. Enough bending your back to those who do not deserve your loyalty. Enough mistaking illusion for truth. The toxic boss will not change. Do not wait for their kindness. Do not pray for their transformation. Do not cling to the fantasy that one day they will suddenly see your worth. Machiavelli warned you centuries ago, rulers seek power, not fairness. Chanakya reminded you, rulers play masks, not sincerity. And now, you know. Now you see. Now, you cannot unsee. So the question is not, will they change? The question is, will you? Will you keep playing the prey? Or will you rise into predator? Will you let their shadow define your light? Or will you light a fire so fierce that no shadow can hold you? Look at your life. Count the hours you have wasted pleasing those who cannot be pleased. Count the nights you stayed awake, replaying their words. Count the mornings you dragged yourself to work with dread. Enough. You were not born to be someone's puppet. You were not born to shrink under someone's voice. You were not born to beg for scraps of recognition. You were born to stand. You were born to rise. You were born to choose. The toxic boss gave you fear. Use it to find courage. They gave you humiliation. Use it to build resilience. They gave you chains. Use them to forge armor. And when you look in the mirror, do not see the victim anymore. See the strategist. The one who observes. The one who sets boundaries. The one who gathers allies. The one who waits for the perfect time and then strikes with precision. This is not just about work. It is about life. Because everywhere you go, there will be toxic bosses in new disguises. In families. In friendships. In love. Even in the voice inside your head. And every time they appear, you will have two choices: surrender or awaken. Awaken. Do not run from the battlefield. Stand in it, with eyes open, weapons sharp, and heart steady. Remember, silence is your shield. Boundaries are your walls. Timing is your arrow. And freedom is your throne. You do not need their approval. You do not need their permission. You do not need their blessing. You are already enough. So here is your call to action. Stop waiting. Stop hoping. Stop excusing. Start acting. If you must stay, stay with strategy. If you must leave, leave with power. If you must fight, fight with patience. But above all, never kneel to illusion again, because the world is not ruled by those who play the loudest games. It is ruled by those who master themselves. And today, that ruler can be you. The toxic boss thought they were shaping your fear, but in truth, they were shaping your destiny. You are not the broken servant. You are the awakened strategist. You are the predator of your own future. You are free. You thought your boss was the enemy, but now you see, they were only the mirror. A mirror showing you your fear, your chains, your hidden strength. Every insult forged your armor. Every manipulation sharpened your mind. Every humiliation prepared you for freedom. The toxic boss was never the end of your story. They were the beginning of your awakening. So leave this video with fire in your chest. Stop waiting for respect. Stop begging for validation. You are not prey anymore. You are strategist, warrior, ruler of your own future. Remember this truth. No one can cage a mind that has awakened. And now, you are awake.